Hey everyone, welcome back to our 6-month podcast series where we are diving into everything that I'm working on now that I'm full-time self-employed. So I left my job 15 weeks ago, my day job, and now I'm pouring all of my time and energy and effort into building a Powered by Women, building my speaking business, building my now coaching business, building Book of Bijou, which is something that I dove more into in the last episode that I haven't really chatted about before. But this series is giving you the inside look at all the things I'm working on, all the strategies I'm putting into place, all the mindset that I'm cultivating. So if you are new here, I suggest starting from the beginning. And so you can really get a glimpse of how we got to this point and all the things that I've been working on. So you can be truly in the loop on everything that's happening currently. So this is week 15. And I literally had to go through my calendar of what has happened the past few days to just remind myself of what has happened the past few days. Because you will probably notice a little pattern of these past few episodes that I don't have a great sense of time these days. I have no idea what's going on. And I am just going with the flow. And honestly, I kind of love that. I get that there are definitely times where we are very much in like organization mode and trying to get things together on the back end to support our growth because we have been growing, which is amazing. But I still know that there are so many like foundational things that we need to truly build Empowered by Women and everything else that's supporting. So let's dive into it. I feel like there's a couple of different things that I want to talk about in this episode. I think let's get the strategy things out of the way first, and then I want to dive a little bit deeper and share a little bit more like more layers to all of this. But all right, let's talk about recent investment. One of the previous episodes, I'm pretty sure I shared that I wasn't going to be making any large investments anytime soon because I had just poured all this money into our recent purchase order with Book of Bijou. That currently, quick update, I'm still going through that inventory. It's a lot. It's a lot of inventory. I've gone through the book covers and quality checked the book covers, and so far, most of it looks great. There are like a couple of pieces that didn't make the cut, but that was also expected. And when it comes to manufacturing, they give a little bit of grace in terms of creating a couple extra just to account for that, to account for like human error, manufacturing error, whatever it is. So far, so good. But I'm still going through like the actual end of pages that go into the books. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to bookofbijou.com so you can see what the product looks like. It is a jewelry organizer that's designed to look like a coffee table book. So there are actual pages that you can insert that holds different jewelry, and you can choose what pages go into the book. But I'm in this space of now organizing through the pages and quality checking all of those. And I also realized actually that they completely left one type of page out of my order. There's supposed to be 6 different pages, and I only have 5 different pages. And I'm like, did we PO wrong? Like, was this part of the invoice? I'm not sure. I haven't even had the chance to check. But they either need to send me a refund or I need to get my life together and recognize that that wasn't even part of what I ordered when it should have been. So I'm not going to dive too much into Book of Bijou this episode, since that is a lot of what I talked about last episode. And I'm still just in the same space of still sorting through the inventory. But let's chat investments. I did say that I wasn't going to be making any large investments anytime soon. And I think some smaller investments around like the $500 range, which I don't know. I wouldn't consider large. I know it could feel large to some people, but I was intentional about which investments I was bringing on. So there's definitely this pattern, sometimes for myself, but definitely for other people that I've seen, where we will consume content, purchase the course, purchase the mentorship, whatever, and then not actually do anything with it. So I didn't want to be in the space where I had all this content, I had all this information, I had all these tools and resources, and I wasn't actually applying them. Looking back at the speaker program that I invested in at the beginning of last year or sometime last year, I do believe that I didn't maximize it to what I should have, what I could have done with it. I still have access to a lot of the content, which is great. So I could still pour my time back into it. And I wouldn't say that I regret the investment. It was probably my largest investment to date, aside from the inventory that I ordered. But I don't think I utilized it enough that I got my money's worth. Same with another investment that I made in a couple of coaches. Still took a lot out of it, but probably not to the extent of like that was well worth the money. So with this $500 range, I do feel really comfortable with it. So one of the first investments that I'm making that I am surprised that I did end up making is in this sponsorship program. And I've kind of chatted about this a little bit as well, where I am really in the space of I want to build out a sponsorship program where I am getting at least 5, hopefully 6 figures worth of sponsorship dollars, and to help support our summits, to help support recurring events that we have, to support our podcast, whatever it looks like. So I want to get really strategic with what our sponsorship program looks like so that I'm not hustling for sponsors, in kind or small monetary sponsors for every single event. I don't want to have to do that. I want the large monetary sponsors. I want people and corporations and companies cutting me checks for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, hell, maybe even $50,000. I'm sure we're going to get there at some point. But I know that I have not had the experience yet to get to that point. And because I know I'm on a timeline, I really want to be able to invest in that kind of education. So I did make an investment into the sponsorship lady. That's what she actually goes by, the sponsorship lady. And I previously mentioned Sponsorship Collective, which was an ad that I saw. And it was this guy. Honestly, his energy wasn't aligned with my energy. He seems great. A little bit boring, if I'm being completely honest. But the information was great. And I was like, I love the way that he is framing sponsorship. And I had done like a sponsorship workshop in the past, and it was all the very like traditional things of having your sponsorship deck and having different tiers. And I still think there's something to it. So I'm not mixing that strategy altogether. But the way that he phrased it, which I really, really loved, is that when you are thinking about bringing sponsors for your events and all the things that you're hosting, your podcast, whatever, you really become this curator of audiences. It's not about selling logo placements in your products or your events or whatever. It's about curating aligned audiences for these companies that are looking to get in front of those audiences, right? And I kind of already knew that, but I didn't have that phrasing in my head. So it was really interesting the way that he put it and about the strategies that they put into place. And it's not about trying to get your deck into their hands. It's about the biggest thing is getting these people on calls and getting on meetings with these companies so that you could ask them all the questions of what they want to do, how they want to engage with their audience, what audience they want to get in front of, and how they want to get in front of their audiences. And then curating a package based on what they're telling, as opposed to you telling them, hey, for $5,000, I'll give you this, this, and this. And I love the idea of it. So I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to roll with this, and I'm going to see what I can do to build out my sponsorship program. So that was the start of it. And he does have a collective, a paid collective, and also a more intensive, like direct coaching, whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm not in a place to make more investments. So I'm just going to take the free things that you're giving me, and we'll roll with it from there. Then, as Meta ads work, I get another ad for a different free sponsorship webinar, and it's with this woman, Jessica. I believe her name is Jessica. She's the sponsorship lady, and I'm like, cool, let me just check this out really quick and see what her take on sponsorship is. Hop on, and it's still kind of very, very similar in terms of the biggest thing is to get these people on a meeting and to ask them what it is that they want. and then give them what they want and attach the number to it, right? Loved it. And on top of that, I didn't only love the information that she was offering, I loved the energy that she brought to the table. I don't have my mule and leaf tea today. Shame on me. So I was like, she also had this sponsorship program, this membership. And I'm like, I literally just was a part of this other sponsorship webinar, and they shared their collective with me. And I didn't feel even slightly, well, maybe slightly inclined to join the collective, but decided against it. And then now here's Jessica offering very similar information, but with her own flair and with her own experience, of course. And she shares the price. And again, the price point, I was like, that's not bad at all. And I want to be able to have all of the right information and the right strategies into place, so I'm not figuring it out on myself. I want to be able to collapse time for myself. And I realize that that's what investments can do for you. So I did it. I pulled the trigger and I was like, you know what? That's not a bad price point. Sold. I want to learn more. I want to get really good at this. And I want someone to be able to help me with that. And I feel like the reason why I didn't invest previously was because the universe knew that I was waiting for you. And this is something that I tell a lot of people that I come across, because a question that I've gotten previously with our community is like, well, like, what happens when there's like multiple people from the same industry? Like, how do you support them if they're both in the same industry? And I'm like, this is not a competitive space. There is more than enough for everyone. And the energy that you bring to the work that you do could be the only differentiating factor that you need, right? And is exactly what happened in terms of this whole sponsorship thing with me as the audience, with me as the potential buyer. There were two people in the same industry offering very, very similar programs and similar supports. But at the end of the day, even though this one was in my face first, I ended up going with the second one because I resonated with her and I connected with her, and I loved her energy and I loved the way that she delivered the information that she was delivering, even though the information was pretty similar to this first person. And that should be, I think that's just something that we can all take away from this, right? It's not about like everyone has the same information. Everyone has very similar information. You don't have to be this person that comes up with brand new ideas all the time and like is like completely outside of the box and inventing all of these new things to be successful. It doesn't matter if your industry is quote unquote saturated. There's billions of people in this world. Of course, wherever you are, it's saturated. People will say that all the time. It's like the whole red car thing. Once you want a red car, you see it everywhere. If you're in the coaching space, you see coaches everywhere. If you're selling jewelry, you see people selling jewelry all the time. If you make candles, there's all these candle makers around you. You as this beautiful person and individual and human, bring the magic to what it is that you're creating. And you are what will allow people to pull the trigger. You yourself, as your person, as this beautiful personality that you have, as the energy that you bring to the space, allow that to shine and let that be your differentiating factor. So, all that to say, I'm super excited for this investment and to dive more into how do I build my sponsorship program and how do I start getting more and more intentional with getting certain people onto meetings with me and hopefully getting some monetary support so that we can bring our summit to life, the Bay Area one, and then also our LA one when we have that, and our Milwaukee one when we have that, and to this recurring event that I've been wanting to put together with one of our partners, and to our podcast when we relaunch the podcast in terms of the podcast with our guests and being able to interview them. I do want to bring a lot of strategy into place once we relaunch the podcast that way. Another investment that I made that I wasn't anticipating making, but feels like it makes a lot of sense for me and the way that my life is a AI workshop to automate the speaking / pitching process for me to really be like my PR person. I had joined another free webinar. This is probably okay. So anyone that's been like thinking about doing free webinars, maybe this is like your encouragement, because I do join free webinars every now and then. And I am the type of person that will often buy afterwards after a really good free webinar. So this one was with, I cannot remember their names, Flourish Media. And they were talking about using AI as like your PR person to help you streamline your pitching process and get more paid speaking engagements. And obviously, you guys already know that my goal is to start getting paid more and more as a professional speaker. I have not had the time really to pitch myself to a lot of people. Unfortunately, that's something that I want. It's not something that I've had a lot of time to do. So I've been intentional with trying to build these relationships because I do want to still build true, genuine relationships. And I know ultimately at the end of the day, that is still going to support me. But I also want to be able to have the other end of it where I have quantity in pitches, right? Where someone or something sending out my information to multiple people to hopefully also bring in speaking engagements for me. So I want to be able to attack it from both ends. And this AI workshop was kind of an upsell from their free webinar where it's like, this is how you can use the paid version of ChatGPT to help you craft your pitches, craft your emails, whatever. I did end up getting the paid version of ChatGPT, which is something that I didn't think that I would ever get, honestly. But like I said, I'm in this space in my life where I don't have all the time to do all the things that I want to do. And truly, I can't afford to build out my team as much as I would like to in this moment. So I want to be able to use ChatGPT as a resource to help me do that. But I am being very intentional of how I'm using ChatGPT. I'm not using it to just craft things and then I'm not even looking at it and then I'm just sending it out into the world. What I love about the paid version is that you can plug in your websites, your actual website, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, whatever, and then allow that to dictate how it's writing things for you. So it's still very much in your language and in your tone. And you can go back in and like tweak it and dictate, like, make this, a little bit more playful, make it a little bit more casual. Use this post that I posted on LinkedIn as like your guide of how to craft it, how to format it for the future, whatever. So I do like ChatGPT in that aspect. But this particular workshop is actually going to show me not just how to plug in prompts and get it to spit out information, but you can actually connect it to certain things like your email so that it'll actually email people for you and follow up on emails. And I'm like, that is what I need. That I know will save me a lot of time. And so I did go ahead and pull the trigger on that workshop, and it came with a few months of their membership. So those are the two things educationally that I'm pouring my time into. How do I build out my sponsorship program so we can get more funding? And how do I leverage AI so that it's saving me a lot of time in the pitching end and hopefully bringing in a lot more revenue without me doing a lot of the heavy. I feel like my brain, this is another day where my brain is just not working as much as I would like. All right. So moving on. One of the other things that I'm using, if you haven't noticed, I started using Descript for our podcast, really because my VA couldn't figure out, it wasn't working for her to like download the video editor that I used to edit our videos for our podcasts. So DaVinci Resolve is a great video editor and they do have a free option. So anyone that's curious, check out DaVinci Resolve. But Descript is a platform that someone shared with me where you could record directly on Descript. And the cool thing about it, for those of you that are like, I want to have a podcast or I want to be a professional speaker or whatever, Descript actually has an AI tool where it removes all of the filler words for you. So if that's something that makes you feel a little insecure, using a lot of ums or likes or whatever it is, you can have Descript just automatically remove that from your video at the end so that you could post your podcast and not feel insecure about it. So I thought that was pretty cool. I've used it once just to test it out. Kind of okay with what that I talk. I know I do have filler words, but I also know this podcast is kind of casual, so I'm okay with keeping it in there. I'm still debating if I want to use this as our official podcast platform moving forward. What I really want is a podcast platform that not only allows me to edit, but that will take my long form content and then automatically chop it up into shorter form content. And then I can just download that or have my VA download that and then schedule out content on Instagram, on LinkedIn, whatever, wherever. But I haven't had the chance to play with that yet. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Any of you do have a podcast and use some kind of platform that allows you to do that, let me know. I've tried Cast Magic in the past. I don't know if you can actually record directly on Cast Magic. I should probably look at that, but I had their paid version for a while where I could upload the video and then it would get my transcript and then break it down text-wise into different content, but I do want the video clips as well. So I am hoping that that's going to be something that I can push out in the future, especially as I'm building out my personal branding with the brand visibility coaching offer that I am offering. So let's switch over to the personal branding and to this coaching offer. I realized I like the phrase brand visibility strategist more than I like brand visibility coach, because I feel like it's been a lot of I don't know, I could see myself as both. I kind of just like the way that brand visibility strategist flows off the tongue. So I did throw that onto my LinkedIn and I am taking that as part of my identity, that I'm going to be a brand visibility strategist. And I am loving just exploring how it's all unfolding as I continue to work with my clients and seeing what do I need to focus on more? How am I identifying what the best partnerships and visibility strategies are for them? Because for me, with Empowered by Women, it has been very much let's just see where everything naturally progresses. And it hasn't been a lot of premeditated strategy, really. It's been a lot of natural flow. Where am I feeling pulled? Where do I feel like this is the most naturally aligned? And so when it comes to supporting my clients, I want to bring that element of alignment, but of course I want to bring more premeditated strategy into it as well. So I'm trying to see if there are any kind of consistencies and pattern in the way that I'm helping out my different clients so that I can in the future create some kind of framework or structure. This leads me to a quote that I heard recently. And I signed up for this virtual summit. It was like a full day thing. I probably caught 40 minutes of it. But the 40 minutes that I did catch of it was really, really good. And there was this girl, Tanya Moneta. She is a CMO. And she said a couple of things that really stuck with me. One of the things that she said was, you want to act like you have to prove yourself in 12 months, but build like you're going to be around for 10 years. And I'm like, that is exactly everything that I'm doing. But she put it together, she actually articulated in a way that felt polished. But I loved what she said. And then she followed that up with listen hard, move fast, and think long. And I will use this quote forever because I thought it was perfect. I don't know if she got this quote from someone else or if this is kind of her own motto, but let me say that for you again, okay? Listen hard, move fast, and think long. And now let's go ahead and elaborate. So listen hard. Listen hard to what is working, what is not. Listen hard to what your community, what your audience is looking for, what your clients are saying about what it is that you're offering. You don't want to be so stuck in your head that you have tunnel vision and that you're putting something on the table that nobody actually wants. Probably, I want to say that we dove into this in a previous episode where you want to give yourself the opportunity to do some market research, to really listen to what your community is asking for so that you can provide the supply for the demand that already exists. So listen hard. The move fast, I love because as a very busy mom and as the busy individuals that we are, parent or not, even though as a parent, it's probably like 10 times over if we're being real, you got to move fast. And I say this, take this with a grain of salt. Move fast in a way that still feels good, but move fast in terms of make sure you're actually moving. When she says move fast, the way that I interpret it is don't allow yourself to overthink things, which is where I see a lot of people get stuck and a lot of people stay stagnant because they are not moving. They're simply not moving. They're giving themselves too much time to overthink things, too much time to sit there and twiddle their thing, twiddle, holy moly, thumbs, and quote unquote, wait until they're ready, but then they're not actually taking steps to get ready. You know what I mean? So move fast, move with urgency, as if you have to prove yourself in the next 12 months, right? But of course, we know that we don't actually have to prove ourselves. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Just do what you want to do what you got to do to create the life that you want. But then build like you'll be around for 10 years. And that is like the think long part, right? Because you don't want to just be trends chasing and following all the fads and like putting all these strategies just because the social media gurus are telling you to put in these strategies, but you don't actually feel aligned to those strategies. Those strategies don't actually bring you sustainability. This is where the think long piece comes in. This is where the foundation comes in because you want to build something that will help you sustain long-term growth. And this is something that I'm supporting my clients with and something that was very intentional, very important for me to be able to offer. One of the gals that I shared my offer with was like, I feel like I'm really good in the visibility part, but what I really want support with is like the foundation and like all of the back end organizational things. And my response was, Carol, yes, like, yes. That is also what I support with. I know like we're not just building visibility for the sake of visibility. It's a visibility with strategy and foundation behind it because we do want to build like we're going to be here for the next 10 years. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want just a short-term business. I don't want like a one-time win, a single viral post, a year of success followed by years of lack of success. I want longevity. I want something that stands the test of time. I want to build a community that will continue to build itself years after I'm no longer leading the way. So, Tanya, that was amazing. Major props to you. And now I want to dive into a little bit of vulnerability in this episode because I feel like this was a week of vulnerability for me in a couple of different ways. I definitely should have gotten my mullein leaf tea ready. For one, I had sent an email to our community last week, I think, about walking with us in the 4th of July parade. And I was really excited about it. Me and the kids and the family. We go watch the 4th of July parade every year in Alameda. And last year, I was like, you know what? That would be so fun if we were actually a part of the parade next year. So next year being this year, I was like, oh, it's happening. It's in a month. Like, let's get this thing going. And because life is so busy and fast paced, it was always on my radar. July 4th is coming around. We got to get moving. Let's go ahead and just share the event on our website so that people can start signing up for it. And then a couple days later, I got an email and that wasn't really asking about the July 4th parade, but it mentioned like, oh, I saw your email about July 4th. And then that was literally the extent of the mention of July 4th. But for some reason, that email like really made me pause and reflect on whether or not being a part of the parade this year was the right move. And I was kind of in this like space of I didn't know how to feel. In the current climate in the country that we're in, of course, there's just a lot going on. And this is not going to be a political thing, but matter of fact, there's a lot of ice raids happening. And there's a lot of families that are being torn apart and that are fighting still for their freedom and for their voices and that are still just fighting. And so I felt a little conflicted when I was kind of given that opportunity to reflect on whether or not to move forward with being in the parade. And then, as timing would have it, we were actually also getting ready to have our Momentum workshop where we're bringing in Lisa May Francisco of Sacred Femme Alchemy, and she was leading us through this EFT tapping session to bring us more clarity. And I shared during that workshop that I felt like I was kind of stuck in this headspace of I want more fun in my life. And I feel like I'm in this era of high energy and fun, and I want to be able to bring that into all aspects of my life, especially into business. But then I also felt this weight of this is not just my platform. This is a community that I have the honor of representing, but it's not my community. It's our community. It's our voices. It's our women that we're representing. And I want to take a stance as a leader of someone with something to say and with very, a very strong moral foundation. And I felt conflicted before that EFT tapping. Afterwards, I was like, you know what? I feel like it lifted a lot of weight off my shoulders and I did get a lot of clarity. And almost immediately after, I sent out an email to our community basically saying, you know what, we're pulling out of the parade. And it really is because the July 4th parade celebrates freedom, celebrates independence. But how can we as a collective show up on that day and in that moment celebrating that, knowing that so many of our brothers and sisters around us don't share that same sentiment of freedom and independence. And it just didn't feel right anymore to move forward with it. So I did decide, you know what, we're going to go and pull out. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense for us to continue being a part of it. Maybe next year, who's in a seat. But that did feel like a very vulnerable moment for me because it felt like, for one, there was like a mirror reflecting back at me, and I really had to sit with myself and see that I'm very privileged to not have yet been directly affected by the things that are, I don't want to say the things that are going on because obviously I've been affected job-wise. But in terms of like ICE and everything like that, my family has not been directly affected, and I feel very lucky and privileged to not be affected by that. But at the same time, I felt guilt for being so detached from it that it wasn't even at the top of my mind when I was thinking about being a part of the July 4th parade. So I think we often can get so caught up in the day-to-day motions and into just the busyness of life and the little trivial things that can be detached from the fact that the world around us is burning down and that there is so much tragedy all around us, and that can lead me to feeling guilt, as so I'm sure some of you feel the same way. And we were driving over to my mom's house over the weekend, and we were going down the highway, the freeway, and all those bridges like over Berkeley. And there were these beautiful protesters basically protesting everything that's going on, of course. And we were humping and like waving, and literally like internally my heart was screaming like, we love you. And it almost made me break down, and I feel like I'm getting emotional now. And even though we can feel so detached from certain things, like we are still so connected. And it's like, these are our neighbors that we're talking about. These are the people like that we work with, or that work to keep our communities alive and thriving, at the schools, at the stores, wherever they are. And these are like friends of our families and friends of ourselves that are being torn apart. And these are little girls, little boys that are being threatened at school by these bullies that are threatening to call ICE on their families and like separate them. And there was this little girl that lost her life by choice because of these threats and because of everything that's going on. And it's heartbreaking. And I'm going to try not to cry. So that's a little bit of vulnerability for you. And that is why we decided to pull out of the parade. And I guess I will just take this opportunity to say that like my heart is with everyone that feels like they're absolutely just going through it. And there is no time for anything else, because your literal lives and families are at stake. And my heart goes out to you, and we stand by you, and you are not in this alone. Okay. I need to get it together. This podcast episode is going a lot longer than I anticipated, but I still want to share one more thing. One more added layer of vulnerability. Because this podcast is like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it is giving me the time, the opportunity to come back and like witness everything that happens, but it's also a curse in that it is a constant reminder of this timeline that I've given myself to make magic happen. And I will not discount the fact that I have already made magic happen, but it's also like, not only have I given myself a time frame for this podcast, but kind of financially, I have this timeline of this is all that's left for my savings to sustain me before I need to either find another job, or I need to be making enough from this business, these businesses, to sustain me so that I can continue working for myself full time. So this past weekend was Father's Day, and we don't always give each other gifts. So it's not like the first time I didn't give him a gift. And I kind of like today did actually get him one, but the morning of Father's Day, it felt like a very heavy one for me. Like I felt like just the weight of a life. And that happens for all of us, right? But I woke up in the morning and was immediately surrounded by all three of my babies. They were like on top of me. And we spent a lot of time in bed in the morning, just like hanging out and cuddling, which was amazing. But at the same time, it's also a reminder that like my time is not my time, that it's already committed to my family a lot of the times. And so after that, we went downstairs and I made breakfast for the family. And then I saw all the boxes of inventory all over the house, and it just reminded me that I'm not going through those boxes enough. And then I was reminded that I didn't yet get a gift for him for Father's Day, but also because I can't really like afford one. I'm trying to be a little bit tighter on my spend just so I can stretch my dollar out a little bit more. And it was just a very heavy day. And I said, go to the gym because that's a big part of like how we take care of ourselves. Both me and Daniel are very um adamant about forcing out. So I wanted to make sure he had that time for himself on Father's Day. And then I was with the kids and Sammy fell asleep and I was still just very like in my head about a lot of things and feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And part of me was like, maybe I should make a post out of this. So it could resonate with some other people. And part of my brand is being very transparent and kind of showing the ups and downs of everything. And then part of me was like, do you really want to share that, like, you're not yet financially stable and that blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I really am tired of feeling like I have to show up in a certain way or feeling like I have to be strong or feeling like I have to show up as successful because in reality, we all have some kind of struggle. And I really wanted to lean into that vulnerability and transparency aspect that I feel like we need more of in this world, and especially from our fellow leaders. And so I wrote this post on LinkedIn and I was basically saying all the things that I'm saying now. And it's really just to show that we all have our struggles and social media is always going to be a highlight reel. But there's always other layers underneath everyone's post that needs to be uncovered and that hasn't been shared. And I don't want anyone else to feel like they're not able to keep up or they're not doing good enough or they're not successful or they're not worthy enough because they don't look as successful compared to the next person that's sharing whatever speaking gig they just got or whatever business, whatever, all of their wins on social media. And it did feel like a very vulnerable post from me because I haven't really talked about it from the money side of things of like, I haven't yet achieved that financial stability that I'm looking for. But I know that so many other people are going through that same thing where it's like, yeah, I went into business for myself, but I'm going through my savings and it's starting to dwindle and I don't know what I'm going to do next and if I'm going to be able to keep pushing through. And I guess that post really was just, you're not the only one. And it's okay if you have these moments of doubt and it's okay if you have these moments of imposter syndrome and you're just not feeling like you are capable of doing the damn thing. Like you are not the only one that feels that way. And honestly, if I'm being fully transparent, I did expect more engagement in terms of like, yeah, girl, like I feel the same way. So part of me gets in my head about that too. Like, oh my God, did I just like discredit myself or like ruin my credibility? But I know that's all in my head. And I also know that I posted it like in the middle of the day on Father's Day where a lot of people are going to be busy. So I'm trying not to get in my head too much about it. But I will always say that there is so much power in vulnerability, and I am challenging myself to continue showing up that way. So if you're listening to this podcast, I challenge you to do the same and to remind yourself that it's not about showing up all polished and perfect and pretty and successful all the time, because that's just not reality. So any part of you is feeling like you're struggling and you're doubting yourself, just know that you're not alone. Okay. I really got to cut this short because we've been talking too long and I got to pick up the kiddos. But thank you. Thank you for being with me in my moment of vulnerability, in me just sharing just the everyday things that comes with being a mom, being an entrepreneur, and all the things that come with life. So hope you enjoyed this episode and I will see you next